Hello, and welcome back to Intelligent Pod, the show where we dive deep into the science and stories behind what makes us human. I'm your host, Sophie Lane, and today we're exploring a topic that's as intriguing as it is beautiful, literally. We're talking about neuroaesthetics, how our brains process art and beauty. Now, you might be wondering, neuroaesthetics? Is that even a real word? I promise you, it is, and it's a fascinating field that sits right at the intersection of neuroscience, psychology, and art. So, if you've ever wondered why a painting makes you feel a certain way, or why some music gives you goosebumps, you're in the right place. We're going to unpack what happens in your brain when you experience something beautiful, and what that means for your everyday life. Let's start by putting this into context. Think about the last time you saw a breathtaking sunset, or maybe you heard a piece of music that stopped you in your tracks. What actually happens in your brain in those moments? Is beauty really in the eye of the beholder, or is there something more universal going on? And can understanding the science of beauty help us lead happier, more fulfilling lives? Today, I'll walk you through the basics of neuroaesthetics, share some remarkable studies, and offer practical tips for bringing more beauty and perhaps more meaning into your daily routine. So, what exactly is neuroaesthetics? Well, it's a relatively new branch of neuroscience that investigates how the brain responds to art and aesthetic experiences. This isn't just about painting or sculpture. It includes music, dance, architecture, even the way we arrange our homes or dress ourselves. Anything that evokes a sense of beauty or wonder is fair game. Let's ground this in some numbers. According to a 2022 survey from the National Endowment for the Arts, over 70% of adults in the United States engaged in some form of artistic activity last year. Whether that was visiting a museum, listening to live music, or dabbling in painting. That's a huge part of our population, and it speaks to how deeply art and beauty are woven into our lives. But what's happening inside our heads when we encounter something beautiful? Let's zoom in on the science for a moment. When you look at a beautiful painting or listen to a moving song, your brain's reward system lights up. This is the same system that's activated by things like chocolate, laughter, or even falling in love. Specifically, regions like the orbitofrontal cortex, the insula, and the amygdala all play a role. Neuroimaging studies have shown that these areas are more active when people view images or hear sounds they find aesthetically pleasing. One classic study, led by Zeki at University College London, asked volunteers to look at paintings and rate their beauty. The results? The more beautiful the participants found a piece, the more blood flow was detected in the medial orbitofrontal cortex, a region associated with pleasure and reward. In other words, when we see something beautiful, our brains are literally rewarding us for it. But beauty isn't just about pleasure. There's also a social and cultural side to this story. What we consider beautiful is shaped by our upbringing, our experiences, and even the society we live in. For example, consider how beauty standards for things like fashion or architecture change over time and across cultures. What was considered beautiful in Renaissance Italy is quite different from what we find attractive today in New York or Tokyo. This brings me to the age-old question: is beauty universal, or is it all subjective? The answer, unsurprisingly, is a bit of both. Studies have shown that while there's a lot of variation in what individuals find beautiful, there are also some constants. For example, people across cultures tend to prefer symmetrical faces and harmonious music. Evolutionary psychologists suggest this might be because symmetry and harmony are signals of health and stability, qualities that were important for our ancestors when choosing mates or identifying safe environments. Let's look at this through a psychological lens. From a cognitive perspective, our brains are pattern-seeking machines. We're hardwired to look for order, balance, and meaning in the world around us. When we encounter art that fits these patterns, whether it's the golden ratio in a painting or a catchy melody in a song, we experience a sense of satisfaction, even joy. But here's where it gets interesting. Art and beauty also have the power to challenge us. Sometimes we're drawn to things that are unfamiliar or even unsettling. Think of abstract art or dissonant music. Our brains may initially resist, but over time, we can learn to appreciate these forms as well. This process of grappling with the unfamiliar is part of what makes art and life so rich and rewarding. Now, let me share a real-life story that I think illustrates this beautifully. A few years ago, a friend of mine who had never considered herself artistic decided on a whim to visit a modern art museum. She was skeptical. She thought she'd be bored. But as she wandered through the galleries, she found herself unexpectedly moved by a large, abstract painting. She couldn't quite explain why, but she felt a sense of calm, almost like the painting was speaking to her in a language she didn't fully understand. Later, she learned that the artist had created the piece during a difficult period in their life, and suddenly, the colors and shapes seemed to make sense. For her, that experience opened up a new way of seeing the world. And that's the magic of neuroaesthetics. It shows us that art isn't just something we look at or listen to. It's something we feel, something that changes us on a fundamental level. So, what can we take from all this? How can understanding the science of beauty help us in our daily lives? First, I encourage you to make space for beauty in your routine. It doesn't have to mean going to a fancy gallery. Maybe it's taking a different route to work and noticing the architecture, or putting on a piece of music you haven't heard in years. Even spending a few minutes appreciating a sunset or the way the light filters through your kitchen window can have a profound effect on your mood and well-being. Second, don't be afraid to challenge your tastes. If there's a style of art or music you've never quite understood, give it another shot. Research shows that repeated exposure can actually change the way our brains respond to unfamiliar stimuli, making them more pleasurable over time. So next time you hear a piece of experimental jazz and think, that's not for me, maybe give it a few more listens. Third, remember that beauty is as much about connection as it is about aesthetics. Sharing art, whether it's a movie night with friends, a trip to a museum, or just swapping favorite songs, is a powerful way to bond with others and even build empathy. In fact, some studies suggest that engaging with art can make us more compassionate and open-minded. And finally, don't underestimate the power of creating, not just consuming. You don't have to be a professional artist or musician. Doodling, singing in the shower, rearranging your furniture, these are all ways to engage with beauty and creativity. Studies have shown that participating in creative activities can reduce stress, boost our mood, and even improve cognitive function. So, as we wrap up today's episode, let's come back to our central question. How do our brains process art and beauty? The answer is both simple and profound. Our brains are wired to seek out and respond to beauty, not just for pleasure, but to help us make sense of the world, connect with others, and even grow as individuals. I hope this exploration of neuroaesthetics has inspired you to look for beauty in new places and to appreciate the wonderful ways your brain makes sense of the world around you. Whether it's a painting, a piece of music, a well-designed building, or a moment of natural wonder, beauty is all around us if we take the time to notice. Thank you so much for joining me on Intelligent Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen. It really helps more curious minds like yours find the show. You can find detailed show notes, links to the studies I mentioned, and more resources at intelligentpod.com. And if you have thoughts, questions, with stories about art and beauty in your own life, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. Just email me at sophie@intelligentpod.com. Until next time, keep seeking out beauty, keep asking questions, and remember, your brain is more amazing than you think. I'm Sophie Lane, and this is Intelligent Pod. Stay curious.